Oh, welcome, welcome.
Hi there, Jake. Hi.
Hello, how are you? So
I'm very good.
th-
Thank
this
you.
this is absolutely amazing. You have an incredible program, and I want you to talk about that. Okay, but I also want you to talk about yourself because I know you have a very interesting background, a very interesting history. So it's not bragging if it's true, okay? But I think people would love to hear it. So you're going to be talking about building a culture of creativity to promote innovation.
That is correct. Yeah.
So
What matters to all of us, I think, at this
th-
point.
this is your platform. Please tell us what you are doing and how it impacts the world.
Thank you. Are we live at the moment?
We are live. You
Oh,
are
we are
on.
live then.
Yes.
Okay. So let me start by sharing my screen then. And please let me know if you can see my screen.
I see bananas.
Okay, you see the bananas. That's the intent here, right? Okay, so let me just move a few things out of the way and we can get started. Okay, well, the first thing I'd like to do is to thank both Jake and Julie and Innovation World, without doubt, for this opportunity once again presented at the GIFT stage. I think Innovation World is doing a tremendous job at actually living my presentation in terms of building a culture of creativity and to promote innovation around the world. It's just fabulous and so inspiring for me. I've been in this business for many years. I've been an international educator now for 35 years. I work at the International School Hanover region. I've been here for the last 4 years, and I'm a technologist, I'm an innovator, I'm a photographer, I'm a musician, or at least a wannabe of all of those. And I truly love the space that we are in right now as a result of COVID. I think what it's really done, it's actually opened our eyes in terms of what the possibilities can be and might be into the future, just in terms of innovation. So with that, I'd like to start by just kind of explaining a little bit about the banana that's kind of rotating with the speckles and the blemishes on it, right? I think perhaps by the end of my presentation, you might make some sense of the wabi-sabi behind the graphic and my choice of, the fruits and vegetables that I'm going to be using in my slides here. So I titled my presentation, What Matters, as a provocation, as a way to trigger those and encourage those conversations between those of us who are really passionate about the future, right? I think it really makes a difference for us as educators to really look at the things that matter to us and to really care about the world that we live in collectively. And this is the reason why I decided to go with the title, What Matters. Now, I think perhaps the first thing I'd like to do to get a sense of what really matters to me is perhaps to make some sense of the world that we live in as a way to frame and act in the unknown. So let's look at that dish that we've prepared for you and imagine that this dish is your world. It sure looks like a mess, I can say, right? At least that's what it looks like in the picture. Can you make sense of what this dish is? Perhaps some of you can, but for most of us, it'll be kind of difficult to identify those ingredients that went into making this dish. But don't be dismayed, all will be revealed in due time. To make sense of the world, one of the things I decided to do was just look at some of the shifts that we've been talking about. And I think all of these shifts are very known to most of us, right? Over the last 50 plus years. And let's try to separate those myths from the facts. So starting with, since 1950, the global population has tripled to 7.4 billion and growing fast. Half the world's population now lives in towns and cities. Grain production has gone up fourfold, tenfold expansion in the global economy, which is phenomenal, which means it takes people out of poverty. Energy use, obviously, as a result, has gone up fivefold, and there's a fivefold increase in the use of fresh water. We see a tenfold rise in the consumption of our natural resources, which leads then to record levels of concentration of greenhouse gases in the atmosphere. People like to eat fish, and most recently I watched a Netflix documentary called Seaspiracy about our consumption of seafood and marine life. The acceleration of our global economies, the globalizations of the world, was perhaps best described by Thomas Friedman in his book, The World is Flat, where he talked about the internet building connected worlds. And we all know that. And consequently, today, we are able to contend and cope with COVID crisis. Human consumption has gone up. The amount of land that we use as a result to grow food, and the mass extinction of animals and plants continues to gather pace. As much as there are deniers, I think for the believers, all is not lost, and it's not all gloom and doom. There's a wonderful book written by Hans Rosling titled Factfulness, and I think it gives us some great insights. Bill Gates considers it as one of the best books that he's ever read, and he's actually contributing to the fund to allow students at universities to actually get a free copy of that book, which is phenomenal because it talks about the shifts and drivers and the changes that have taken place. But the most important thing, I look at these shifts as drivers of change, because these drivers of change will propel and shape the future that we're living in. But then the question begs, why do we need to care? We need to care because these drivers of change will compel us as a society to change and to alter our actions. And we've seen this most recently over the last 12 months, how the entire globe has had to shift and change as a result of the COVID pandemic. But the question then is, how do we make sense of these drivers? So I'm going to take a few minutes to just examine one of these drivers of change. And I think we can all agree that we are now living in a very wasteful world. All the waste we generate originates from natural resources, which are often extracted in very damaging ways. Waste disposal, in turn, causes additional problems such as pollution and climate change. So where does that leave us? We're left with a world of mounting waste. If you look at the graphic, the amount of waste that's generated a day, from 0.5 to 12 million tons a day and growing fast, is a result of world population increase, economic growth, and the explosion in our demand for resources, the rise of consumerism, as we call it. So this has led, consequently, to the great acceleration. And what is the great acceleration that we face? The pressure from humankind with a tremendous impact on the planet, feverish demand for more resources, leading to continuing change, the impact of which, and this is the frightening part, is just emerging, and many of which are still unknown to us. So we've got to find a way to work through and prepare ourselves and to build capacity in our next generation to address, to resolve some of these unknown challenges that we are faced with. While there's huge focus on these various domains and demands such as food, energy, and water, these are the big challenges, right? And the other shifts that we talked about. For me, more importantly, is to get our students, okay, and our young thinkers to look at the less obvious interconnections and relationships between them. What we tend not to look at is what is happening between the cause and effect between these various domains that we've been talking about. If we are to shape this future and develop a game plan, we need to have a plan that will be sustainable, that will be creative, and that will be innovative. So one of the matrices that I've used over the years is actually the Ansoff's matrix. This is a modified version of Ansoff's matrix from the Stanford Change Labs. And it basically provides some insights for how these challenges stack against the possible solutions. And most of us tend to stay in the known, where we know the challenge and we know the solution. This is what schools are all about. This is what testing is all about. But what we'd love to is to push the kids right up to the quadrant number 4, which is on the top right-hand corner, where we are going to have to contend with challenges that are unfamiliar, unknown, and solutions for which we have no idea where we're going to start from. Which then takes us to good design and the need for good design. And today, when you look at design, people are talking about the technological factors, they talk about the economic factors, they talk about the human-centered factors of good design, which is very important. But we need more than just good design. What do we need? We need to reframe the mindsets of our children, of our next generation. And this is exactly what GIFT is doing at the moment. And it's phenomenal. And that is why I so very much appreciate the work that Innovation World, Jake and Julie are doing at this time. Because what they're doing is just opening minds. I just watched a couple of presentations this morning and I was just blown away. You know, the age of the kids and the way they articulate, the passion with which and the interest with which they've done this. And we have a couple of teams working on our design hackathon, and it's just phenomenal to see how these kids in a short period of time, and that's what it's all about. It's about reframing the mindset. But there is something else that we need. As we prepare for the unknown, as I said, we need to understand those not so obvious interconnected pressures. So we understand the unknown challenges for which there are no known solutions. We need good design. We need a reframing of the mindset through, who can guess what it is? Because this is not an interactive session, but the word starts with the C. And this is where we enter into the world of creativity. We need to get creative. So what does that word actually mean? We use it a lot. We throw it around, we bounce it around, right? But the sad fact is science has found out, and this is pretty dampening. Science says we get less creative as we age. So if creativity is the big ingredient that's going to really bring all of this magic to come about in terms of the innovations that we're looking for, then what are we going to do about it if our hope was to increase creativity in our children, but we end up with the science telling us that we are getting less creative? Now, our creativity scores, as you see, is pretty dismal, right? And it does kind of, dampen one's spirit when you look at 5-year-olds with a 98% score, whereas adults have a 2%. Oh my goodness. But again, it's not all doom and gloom, right? I think the question that we need to ask is, why is this happening? And what can we do and should we be doing, to address this concern that we have, right? And I was fortunate to have listened to a keynote speaker many, many years ago, and she was doing a double PhD, and she had done 40 years of meta-analysis of research papers on creativity. And it was phenomenal, the graph that she shared. She showed how creativity was exponential when kids are growing up to about 9, 10, 11. And then it starts to kind of taper off, and then it starts to plateau when they're about 15, 16. And then the sad part was the curve where it starts to go down by the time they're 20, 21, feeling that they can no longer create, which is rather an unfortunate situation to be in. So I think it's time for us collectively to build this culture of creativity, to work together, to bring together a movement that will really embrace creativity within our organizations, within our schools, within our universities, okay, and to build it together. But what we need as a first step is to build an environment that is nurturing of creativity. And I think for me, this really requires authentic learning experiences, where the learning starts with making it real, meaningful, just in time, relevant. There is a state of flow that emerges as a result. Too often, we go into these fictitious situations and simulate what the real world looks like. But guess what? GIFT is done. They're actually getting the kids to go out there and actually look at some authentic, real world challenges. Address it, face it, fail. That's okay. Let's get creative for how we're going to kind of overcome some of these challenges collectively. So we start with authentic learning experiences. We move into a space where I can acknowledge this as an educator over the last 35 years, that we are all acting. There is a lot of action that's happening. There's a lot of connections that we are making. And at times we deviate, right? We get out of that box that we put ourselves in, naturally or unnaturally. But I think for me, where the magic really happens is the intersection of these three. When you start to see action, connection, and deviation happen, at the very center and the very core of this intersection is where we see creativity flourishing. How do we bring this all together? How do we just compact it to make sure that we're not working in silos and in isolation? So for me, whenever I think of creativity, this is a picture I took here by the lake, most recently, of the sun rising. And I think of Confucius and what he said. Tell me, and I'll forget. Show me, and I may remember. Involve me, and I will understand. Thank you, GIFT, for involving our kids in this enterprise of moving us forward. So perhaps now it's a good time for me to bring you to the rotating banana. And let's look at the word wabi-sabi, or the Japanese term, which really resonates with my presentation. So let's take a minute to consider what wabi-sabi is. Wabi-sabi is the aesthetic sense and appeal of Japanese art as a way to appreciate and emphasize that everything holds some sort of imperfection and irregularity. Wabi is quiet simplicity, imperfect quality, freshness, irregularity, a rustic sense, whereas sabi is the subdued refinement and the beauty, the serenity and the grace that only comes with age. So it's a combination of, we are obsessed with trying to make things perfect, finding the right answers, right? We are obsessed with trying to get it right all the time. Creativity doesn't require that. If you ever lived in a community of creative people, you want to understand. I grew up in a home where I was surrounded by creative people, artists, musicians, and it really opened my eyes in terms of what that looked like. And there was so many imperfections, but through those imperfections were huge opportunities for creative enterprise, for building that spirit to come together and to really come up with solutions and innovations that perhaps eluded us all of these years. So what are the indicators? So if I were to walk into a culture of creativity, what might I see as evidence? I would see a heightened level of awareness, folks looking and observing with curiosity, involving in doing, taking some risks, using their instinct, and with intentional focus, practicing, paying attention to, embracing obscurity. Yes, let's embrace obscurity, the things that we don't know. Limiting the comparisons, who's better or which looks better. Investigating, examining with passion and rhythm, ideating, empathizing, appreciating, applying multiple perspectives, and using all our senses. And I see that in the presentations that we've had so far, right? These are, for me, the indicators. If I had to come up with a matrix and I had to do an assessment of how the kids were performing today, these were the indicators I was looking for. Were they taking risks? Of course. The session just before I started, I saw these two little kids. Wow, talking about the apps, right? Amazing, amazing. Talk about, intentional focus. Talk about embracing obscurity. I can't even remember what I was doing. I hope I was doing something creative and something inspiring and innovative at their age too. So finally, if we were to build a culture of creativity, what are the ingredients? What am I actually going to put in this mix? It's a real mix. It's a mashup, right? It's no one thing. It's a combination of, and it comes in different doses. And the formulation, there is no formulation, right? As much as we try to find, the optimum balance, which is what most of our schools do. We try to find the optimum balance because we are constrained by time and schedules and all of those wonderful things that we need to make it all happen. But then what do? We limit the way we mix because, I try to cook some Indian food. I can never get it like my mom. And I used to ask my mom to teach me, Mom, what's the recipe? And guess what? She'd laugh at me. What did you just say? What's your recipe? How do you make the food taste so good? And she'd laugh at me. She said, I just take this and I take that and I drop it in. And it comes with wabi-sabi, right? Imperfections. She's not measuring anything. We go by 250 ml off, and that's how I cook and it comes out really mushy, So that's the beauty of the ingredients. So if I were to build an organization, or if I were to describe GIFT, this is how I would describe it, right? An organization that is welcoming of new ideas, accepting failures and moving on, scheduling unstructured time. Guess what? We are here on a Saturday and a Sunday to do these things, trying new challenges. I'm not sure what time it is for Jake, but I bet it's late, or early morning for him. Making the time, fostering intelligent risk-taking, refraining from making any judgments, promoting divergent and convergent thinking, encouraging open communications and collaborations, not being afraid, okay? Developing flexible and innovative learning opportunity spaces. Applying a strengths-based approach for me is so very important because that's when you get the best out of people. Let's look at their strengths. Let's get best out of them. Let's capitalize on those passions and interests, and let's celebrate and recognize success and achievement. Let's use a human-centered way of design thinking, and let's rely on frequent, constructive, supportive feedback. And most importantly for me, I think just let's remove that red tape, the barriers and the bureaucracy. If I could dump it and redo it all, I'm not sure, how many heads of schools are watching me, but, that's the very truth, right? That's the truth. If we can, and if we are bold enough to do this, perhaps there is hope. So in closing, I'm actually going to read a statement that I wrote, and I hope it resonates with you. And this is the very kind of, in a nutshell, what I believe. So in closing, when we look at those ingredients, let me make an appeal for all of us to remain bold and not limit ourselves by structures we created, and our quest for perfection, to allow our students to rediscover the spark of creativity, to grow and nurture their creativity, so that they can collectively build, and we can collectively build a culture of creativity to address the many known and unknown challenges we face and will continue to face. Let me tell you, this is not the last of a pandemic, and this is not the last of a global crisis that we will face. Perhaps not in our lifetime, I hope not, but sometime into the future. Let's remember Wabi Sabi, and let's appreciate, let's encourage, let's emphasize imperfection and irregularity. That's okay too. Let's stay creative and let's enjoy the moment. For those of you who think, you'd like to continue this conversation, please feel free to follow me at Happy Brain Now. And I'm always here to hear your thoughts and to collaborate and work with you. And most importantly, I think, as I said, what GIFT is doing, there's so many new opportunities to kind of connect and find those interconnections between our students in all of these different countries. So this is a huge opportunity for us to really come together and really make that difference. So with that note, I'd like to once again thank all of you for your time to attend. Special thanks to Jake and Julie once again, and Innovation World for this opportunity.
Very good. Thank you. Very impressive. Very impressive. Can you, if you stop sharing the screen, we can all see.
Sure.
Great. So some of your students are going to be presenting in a little while. Can you tell us more about your school and what program they're in and what's going on?
I can do that. Yes, thank you for this opportunity, but I'm going to talk a little bit about something that came to mind as a result. And I think this was largely inspired through GIFT again, and I thought of an event that as a result of COVID, and we had to put a full stop to a lot of what we were doing in our school. And we've taken our school from a very traditional approach to having at least an area that we call TIDE, which stands for technology. It's not about detergents. It's technology, innovation, design, and entrepreneurship as a way for students to really experience learning through hands-on learning by doing to learn. So we've come up with a lot of innovative programs. It includes robotics, building of bamboo bikes, 3D design, and working with people like PTC. And this has kind of led to something that I decided perhaps it's a way to collaborate with schools around the world. And we called it Craft 2021, the Design Thinking Hackathon. It's happening as we speak. The official date started on the 12th of April and ends on 23rd. We have 29 teams from around the world, from Cameroon, Nigeria, the United States, China, India, Germany, and we have 2 teams, and Romania too. Yeah, 2 teams from Romania. We have 4 of our teams today, and thank you to Jake for giving us this opportunity to let the kids present their work so far. It's work in progress. They have until the 23rd. So we have 2 teams from our school, the Hydro CE team, which has been working on a food computer. This was a completely kind of self-motivated project, had nothing to do with us, with kids who were just inspired and decided they had to do something about growing organic and sustainable food. So look at 11:30 German time for their presentation. They call the Hydro CE. The second team is actually a team that is a cross collaboration team. We have students from the primary, the middle school, and the high school working on a project to actually prevent forest fires. there was a student in the grade 5 who was very passionate about forest fires and the need to prevent forest fires as a way to support the UN Global Goal number 3, which is the theme of the hackathon, which is good health and well-being. And she decided that it was very important for us to create a system, and they have designed a very impressive system, and they've also built a prototype. We partnered with the PTC on Shape, and they have been super supportive with our project, and the kids are all expected to do a 3D design, but they've gone beyond it. They've actually started to build little prototypes and models here. And you will see during the presentation the model that works. It's a functional working model that puts out a fire in a little miniature forest. And then we have 2 Romanian teams too that will present. And then when the competition ends, we hope that this is a spark to encourage more schools and organizations around the world to continue doing similar types of projects where we can collaborate and share and learn from each other with participation and support from organizations like Gift Innovation World, PTC, and so on. So we are very fortunate that we've had this support from our board and our leadership to allow our students to explore, and it's been wonderful. And what I love most is the groundswell as a consequence, right? And people are getting excited beyond the students. The teachers want to work on a variety of projects, and of course, there's always constraints of time and timetables and structure and funding and so on. But we've done well, I must say, in a small way with a very limited budget. So it's not about the money. I think it's about the spirit. It's about just can-do attitude. And I think it's going back to that culture of creativity. It's okay. It doesn't have to be perfect, but it's a start. And in that start, I think we've started to see some huge shifts in the way our students think, and the efficacy that is kind of really started to build in them. And that's basically the beginnings of capacity, to address future challenges and future problems that we will all face.
Great. Lily is the head of a wonderful school in Malaysia. I didn't get a chance to introduce her, but Lily, did you have a question or a comment?
I was just fascinated with the yellow theme in Dr. Johnson's presentation, and the visuals of food and whatnot. But yeah, quite a lot of poignant points that you have raised there. And I know it's a movement now for most schools as well as organizations to kickstart this innovative movement, and let's hope we will persevere despite the pandemic, and we will start better collaborations globally.
Absolutely. Terima kasih. Apa macam? Saya tahu sikit-sikit Melayu.
Baguslah, Dr. Johnson.
Bagus. Sudah
Very good.
makan. I was born in Singapore, so just so you know, and Malay was my bahasa, was my second language. I lived there for 12 years of my life, so Malaysia, Singapore, that's where home is. Yeah.
You miss the food?
Tell me about it. Tell me about it. Tell me about the food in Malaysia. Oh Lord. Oh God, I'm getting really hungry now. But right, absolutely right. We've had a conversation about whether we should be an effective school before we are a progressive school, or my take on this is we don't have to wait until we become effective to become progressive, right? I think the two need to go hand in hand, and one supports the other. And I think this is the wabi-sabi bit, right? We're all trying to reach that level of perfection. What does effective actually look like in the end? It's my question, When is it going to end? Learning never ends, not for me at least, right? And if we continue to do this and we continue to wait until we are effective before we can be innovative and before we can be progressive, then I think we have a challenge. I think one should feed off the other, and if the two can coexist. And I think the model that we have created in our school is a testament for me personally, for the kinds of things the kids have done. We took a rookie team, robotics. We actually saw the Malaysian team and Singapore team there in Dubai in 2019. It was a team that had less than 10 months of experience competing with teams that, I started the program in Europe 12 years ago in Romania with the world top teams, the super team from Singapore. I mean, that's who they were competing with. And we came back with the 3rd place in the world, winning the Albert Einstein Award for International Excellence. What does that tell you? Out of 192 countries, 3,000 students in Dubai. Now, for me, that validates my belief and perhaps my madness about this whole notion that we can be bold and we can be innovative and we can encourage our kids to build that resilience and the capacity to believe in themselves, dare to dream, is what Bruce McCandless, the astronaut, told me when I met him at the Johnson Space Center many years ago when I wanted to be a teacher in space, right? He signed a poster for me and he said, "Dare to dream, JJ," you know? And that was the mantra and the tagline for our team when we went to Dubai, "Dare to dream." So it doesn't hurt, you know, and let's be smart, let's start small. And as you said, I think there's a movement out there, but let's keep that momentum and let's really come together as a collective.
I agree. That's true. Efficacy is, I mean, what's the measure of efficacy? That's pretty subjective. But the whole purpose of the school is to prepare our students for the real world. And the real world is VUCA enough, it's volatile and whatnot. So we have to make steps to make sure that our students, when they do leave the school system, which is unauthentic as it is, it's quite doctored. And you were talking about authentic learning and authentic setting. So we have to try and endeavor our best to prepare our students for that, the real world.
Absolutely. Many people think I'm a disruptor. I'm not really a disruptor. I come from the engineering world, so I'm very first principles based. You know, I think when I ask you 3 times 7, we don't have to work a project around it. 3 times 7 is 21, and that's it. There's no thinking required. There's nothing. So I'm very vested in what I call the 80-20 principle. At the very least, 80% on grid, you know, curriculum driven. Get the fundamentals, get it right, build the foundations. Because you can build a bridge, or you can, you know, construct an aeroplane if you don't have those fundamentals of science and math, right? Reading, writing, and all of that good stuff. But we must allow for 20% of inventive, creative, innovative time. That's where I believe. And the translation of that is why in TIDE we have the E word standing for entrepreneurship, the application of. Now, 35 years as an international educator who's worked around the world, for me, what is missing in all of the things that we do is we talk a lot about it. We provide the kids those opportunities within the context of our schools, but we never really give them that opportunity to go and apply. And that's what engineers do, right? We have internships, we have to go out. My internship was at the Indian Aerospace Research Center, you know, working with scientists and things like that. Real. And what I learned in in 3 months was more than what I learned in the 5 months, right? The application of, the transfer of that knowledge. So I think we need to find some balance, and that's where the schedule limits us to a point. How do we do an 80-20 is what I'm still a strong proponent of. You go to Google, that's their model, the 80-20. The 20 feeds the 80%, right? You know, that's what the business world has shown us, right? And I think if you talk to any entrepreneur, they will ask that you do that. But of course, let's not forget the fundamentals, as you said, right? You know, let's make sure that we give them the core, you know, the foundations, right? The pillars of learning. And support them through that process, but at the same time, giving them those opportunities to really enact and make it real. And who knows, you know, some of these things that we are seeing today might become real. And that would be very, very awesome. You know, those apps and things that kids are thinking about, you know, the Hydro C, these kids really want to build that, you know, scalable food computer. And I'm hoping, you know, they're looking for funding now for some venture capital, you know, so that they can bring this idea to front and really make it happen, make that little difference. And who knows, that might transcend into something else, you know. Yeah.
Can you hear me? Bye-bye.
Bye-bye. So, Dr. Johnson, I'm going to introduce our next presenters.